Hi, schön, dass ihr wieder dabei seid bei einer neuen Ausgabe Mic Rider Deep Talk. Bevor die Folge losgeht, 2 kurze Hinweise. Leider hatten wir dieses Mal Probleme mit der Aufnahme. Das heißt, mein Ton ist einerseits ziemlich schlecht und andererseits haben wir keine funktionierende Videospur. Sorry dafür, aber inhaltlich lohnt sich die Folge wirklich sehr, deswegen habe ich beschlossen, sie trotzdem so zu veröffentlichen. Zweitens haben wir das Gespräch mit meinem heutigen Gast Tim Friedlander aus den USA vor den Präsidentschaftswahlen aufgezeichnet. Sonst hätten wir natürlich auch darüber gesprochen, was das Ergebnis für Auswirkungen für uns als Kreativbranche hat. Hey, thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of Mic Rider Deep Talk. 2 quick things before we start. One, unfortunately we had some major problems with the recording program, so my audio is pretty bad this time and we have no video. I'm really sorry about that, but content-wise the episode was super interesting and helpful and informative, and that's why I decided to air it anyway, although it may not do justice to a voice artist's podcast. And second of all, we pre-recorded this episode with my guest Tim Friedlander from the US before the presidential elections. Otherwise, obviously, we would have discussed the outcome and the implications for our creative industry. But for now, have fun and enjoy the episode. Mic Rider Deep Talk. Menschen, Business, Diskussionen. Der Mic Rider Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to a new episode of Mic Rider Deep Talk. Today, as you might have noticed, we're in English because I have a guest from America. Hello, Tim Friedlander.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Tim. Nice to meet you.
Exactly.
Full disclosure, we know each other. We've been working together for a year and a half now, since Tim is also a voice actor, but also president of NAVA, the National Association of Voice Artists, and the co-president of UVA, representing the English language. But apart from that, maybe, Tim, you take it and tell us a bit about yourself, other than that CV stuff.
Sure. Absolutely. My background actually is in music. I come from music. I was actually a classical clarinet player. I got my degree in classical clarinet performance.
Wow.
Originally, and I'm from Seattle, and I grew up in Seattle in the 90s and was playing music put my first band together in 1992 and was performing around the Seattle area in the 90s and was kind of pretty deeply ingrained in that part of the community, and moved to LA in 2002, moved down to Los Angeles with the intention of having my voice acting career support my music career, which was a brilliant idea at the time. But, I got to Los Angeles in 2002, which was right on the tail end of the big commercial strike that had happened with SAG-AFTRA, which shut down Hollywood. And then we were on the cusp of the internet and streaming and all of these changes. So I ended up actually playing music professionally for years, taught music for about 12 years. I was a music teacher for elementary school, primarily working on music, but went full-time into voiceover, decided to do that in 2014. I actually went back to grad school to work on my master's in music education. And at the same time, I was like, well, let me just give voiceover one more shot. And that was in 2014. And by 2016, I actually was working full-time and quit doing everything else that I was doing to focus primarily on voiceover, which just kind of brings us to where we are today.
Cool. Amazing. And you also have a studio. You're also a studio owner, right? So you built like the production side around your voiceover career. That's amazing.
Yeah. We've got I started with one here in Hollywood, which is where I'm sitting right now, Soundbox LA, and expanded into 2 more in Los Angeles. We've got one in Nashville, and then we're opening one in Boston right now. And built entirely, as you said, kind of around the voiceover career. I just had I had a studio from my music career and would invite people over for classes and training. And then they started asking me if they could do sessions here. And I said, well, I guess we could just do sessions. So we kind of built the studios around the needs of the voiceover community in Los Angeles, which has worked out really well because we can really cater towards what voice actors need. And being a voice actor, all my partners were all voice actors as well. So when somebody comes into our studio, you're not walking into somebody who knows how to be an engineer and you have to be the voice actor. You walk into a studio with a bunch of other voice actors who know how to set up the studio, who know how to help For people who are new, what's it going to be like to have headphones on? And what's it going to be like to be in a space where the room is completely dead? What's it like to actually have direction from somebody on remote? So we know what it's like to work from the actor's side of things, which I think helps actors a lot. If you have people who've been through the same thing, like I know what it's like to be in the booth. So if I'm an engineer, I can anticipate what it's like for somebody to be in the booth and help kind of navigate that experience.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. That's what I wanted to say too. Direction-wise, I think that's gold. That's gold.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
cool.
and as you know, it's like, there are some very unique things about being on the microphone that can can throw somebody off from their performance. If something doesn't sound right, something's weird, the space isn't comfortable, the chairs aren't any of those things that we as performers need to make that experience great for us so that we can give the best performance. If we as an engineer, as a studio owners, can make that even better, then everybody gets a better experience, a better product in the end. And that's really valuable, I think.
And how did you come about? You're also founder of NAVA, right? Not only the president, but co-founder. How did you come about with NAVA and setting up the whole thing?
It kind of came out of the studios, because we were kind of all the stuff that we've been doing in the studios for the last 10 years. It was kind of isolated to Los Angeles because you had to be in Los Angeles to really take part in the classes and things that we were doing. And we wanted to expand that to the broader community in the United States. My co-founder, Karin Gilfrey, who's our vice president, had a group like mine in New York. So she had the New York side of things and I had the Los Angeles side of things. And we just kind of merged those two groups together and launched NAVA. Our intention was to launch, our purpose was to launch with healthcare for voice actors. Because in the United States, you don't have healthcare.
Right. Thanks for remembering. Thanks for remembering why I'm very comfortably living here and going to the doctor. No, but okay, yeah, exactly. Sure, that makes sense. Total sense. Didn't have that one on the radar. Yeah,
and that was really what we launched with. We launched with access to national health care for freelance voice actors. Because if you're a member of SAG-AFTRA, you have to earn $27,000 a year in order to get healthcare. And so if you don't get healthcare, if you don't make that much money in union work, you don't get healthcare. So you could make $26,000 and you're not going to get healthcare. You could make $26,999. You could be $1 short and you're not going to qualify for healthcare for that next year. So we wanted to offer something that would help supplement that, as well as people. A lot of people in the U.S. either stay in jobs they don't want to be in, they stay in relationships they don't want to be in because it comes with health insurance. So you'll work at a job you hate because you get health insurance.
That sounds grim.
So we wanted to give people the opportunity to get out of that and have other options.
I feel you. No,
it's very grim. It's very grim.
Maybe tell me, you have more international experience than me probably. What are the main differences between you talked about having healthcare or not, but what are the main differences between being a voice actor in the US to maybe Europe, what you got?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, one of the things that I think you know this as well is that voiceover is a very international business. It's very, we work with people all over the world frequently. One of the things that we've learned, and this is all stuff that I've been learning through NAVA and UVA, is all the differences in privacy rights and data protection and biometric laws that vary by each country. The United States has, multiple states, and every state gets to decide how they want the laws to be in those states. So you live in one state, you have different protections than if you live in another state. So California and Texas and New York and Ohio and Indiana, like all depending on where you live, you're going to have different protections as a voice actor. Whereas, you get GDPR or you get EU, where you have broader kind of privacy rights for a larger protection of people that are unified in a little bit more way than they are in the United States. And that's one of the biggest things that we've seen, that we've learned. And then also looking at other countries, you get into Africa or Brazil, where the United States has more protections. And so you get lots of different varying levels of copyright protection, of data privacy protections, of privacy, right of privacy, right of publicity, right to have control over what happens with your voice. And those vary, by country, by state in the United States. And that's something that we were trying to work with, which I think is one of the advantages of having a group like UVA, is that we can see where a lot of where good things are happening and where bad things are happening, and where there are strong laws and where there's weaker laws, and that we as an industry can potentially put into place some industry-wide protections that we at least can try to fight for within our country if we don't have that, and we can help champion for people in other countries who don't necessarily have those same protections. That's where I see the power being in this group.
Yeah, just for a quick context, GDPR is DSGVO. DSGVO, just for our German listeners who aren't used to English, GDPR is the English version of DSGVO.
Yes.
So you kind of touched my next question. That was like, how did you hear about UVA? And obviously now I get what you get out of an organization like UVA, but how did you get?
Yeah,
how did you?
We got connected. I guess we're called EVOTA originally, EVOTA. And I got connected with somebody through South America who connected me with somebody in Spain who then kind of, and it very quickly snowballed into a much larger group. And I was happy to be there at kind of the beginning of that to help kind of become, help kind of shape the group the way it is now with yourself and some of the people we have from Spain and France to kind of really put together this kind of global organization. And I don't even remember exactly where it started. I think Jaime from Spain, who was there at the very beginning, and we haven't seen him in a while. I think Sarah took over for Jaime. But that's how I got connected through him specifically into that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Yeah, and we in Europe were thankful for you joining us, since we quickly realized, well, okay, first of all, you get that you can solve AI on a national level. Okay, so we started to build a European group or a forum kind of thing, and then we saw, well, but most of the tech is coming from the US, and maybe some from Israel, and maybe some from, I don't know, Russia or something like that. So having a European group doesn't help much either. And then already in you came with your almost I don't know, let's put it like 2 years of experience advantage, because the technological advancement had been starting in the US, and you guys had been living through what we are going through now. So for us, it was golden, and was very helpful and resourceful, profiting from your experiences and your difficulties,
which has been great. I mean, I like being able to share these things and to be able to kind of get a little, because you're exactly right. A lot of the things will start here, and I'm in Hollywood, I'm in Los Angeles, so I'm in where the tech companies are going to be using this in entertainment. We're seeing it. We're literally seeing it on the ground as it happens. Silicon Valley is just north of us, so 5-6 hours north, you get where OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and Meta and all these companies are based. So a lot of the things that we deal with, we get to deal with on a state level because the tech is being built here, but also the artist community is here as well. So you have these two very big competing industries, Hollywood versus tech, which are located in the same state, about 6 or 8 hours away from each other. So even before we get into like federal laws, we're getting into state laws, we're getting into local laws that are butting up against each other. And it's really been really interesting to see, because we're seeing now, like a year later, things that we saw here in the US, these contracts now are showing up a year later in Germany, in Italy, in Spain. And so we can say, great, here's what to look for in this contract. Here's what we found out. We've already gone through these contracts. We know what they're going to do with it. We already are seeing what this contract is going to let somebody do. So beware of that when it gets to you. And we're seeing the same thing. Things are hitting Africa. Things are hitting Brazil. I think the focus on English, neutral American English for a lot of these models is going to be what is going to be the larger group of this. But as we talk about getting authentic voices and representation from other countries, they're going to go to, instead of trying to get somebody who sounds like they're from Kenya, these companies will go to Kenya and get these voices. So if we, as UVA, as NAVA, as all these large groups, can help Kenya navigate this, can help Nigeria navigate this, can help South Africa navigate these things that are happening, that already is advantageous, because they don't have to learn the way we did. And we can already help them navigate these contracts, help them navigate the technology, and hopefully kind of proactively put some protections in place so that they can have a head-on discussion with these tech companies as they come in.
Yeah, and ask the right questions, point the finger in the right direction, and that's super useful. I'm sorry for you guys, but you guys probably had to learn it the hard way, kind of.
Absolutely.
And we have a bit of a cheat code, so to speak.
Yeah.
Well, let me just Tim.
Yep. Well, and I think I think part of that also is that the tech companies are learning as well, right? I mean, they're trying things out, and they're going to try them out first in here with us, and we can push back against those. So by the time they get to other countries, they've been already kind of worked out. They're a little bit more refined, and so we get I think there's a lot of things that we've seen here that you're probably never going to see in the other countries because they just don't work. Right? There's things they've tried, they've fallen apart. These companies didn't last very long, and so you're not going to see those. You're going to see probably the big companies like OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and Amazon, Meta, the ones that can afford to stay in business, the ones that can afford to fight the global regulations, that can afford to fight back against GDPR, can afford to fight back. Those are the countries, those are the companies that are going to survive and kind of make this globalization of AI that we're seeing right now. And obviously, each country has their own kind of homegrown tech, and they've got there's companies that are specific to France and specific to Spain and specific to Italy, but these large companies, as we have seen, Amazon is going to take over the world. They're going to try and take over everything. Google and Meta and Microsoft and Apple, they're going to try and go for global domination.
I'm sorry, I have to laugh. Otherwise, I can't cope with that. But yeah,
right.
It's funny because it's true. It's
well, which I think also, I think if you have that in mind, then you can say, great, we already know what they tried to do in the U.S. They're going to come over to Austria and they're going to try and do the same thing. So let's not let them. We know what they're going to do. Here's their playbook. Here's what they're going to try and do. Meta's going to go into France. Well, this is what they tried to do in the U.S. Don't let them do it in France. And so so as you get that larger, as you kind of get that pool of tech companies shrinking down, what they're going to do. So there's not these big surprises that are coming out. There are some, there will be some obviously, but I think it's advantageous for us to look at what they've already tried to do in the U.S. and just be prepared for that as they come to other countries. And that I think is really advantageous.
Yeah. So for everybody who listens in the first time, also a bit of context. Obviously, UVA, the United Voice Artists, are the global umbrella organization for all the voice artists and national organizations who want to join. At the moment, we're at about 36 national organizations and about to board 2 more. So we're growing. And I'm just asking because I'm curious, how did that change your day-to-day business? Did that change anything because you have so much on your plate already? And then a global organization, that's what was missing on that menu.
Yeah, exactly. It's been, this was, NAVA is, we're not yet 2 years old. NAVA's not even 2 years old yet. And we kind of stepped onto the global stage less than a year ago. When we kind of debuted at San Diego Comic-Con, which for anybody, if you follow the Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con is the largest Comic-Con convention in the world. The Comic-Con.
It's the Comic-Con, basically. Yeah.
And that's where, like Marvel will debut their new movies there, right? You'll go and you'll see the new Star Wars or whatever it might be. And it takes over an entire city, right? All of San Diego gets literally taken over. So, less than a year ago, we had the opportunity to be, we had a panel set up, and it happened to coincide with the beginning of the SAG-AFTRA strike.
Yeah, I remember.
And so we stepped into that conversation literally on the day of the strike and went from nothing to 45 press interviews in 24 hours.
Wow.
And being interviewed alongside, and now after this interview today here in Los Angeles, I have a news crew coming into the studio to interview me for the work we've been doing with NAVA and with UVA and with SAG-AFTRA. But I think it just really showed the need for voiceover specifically to have a representation, and no pun intended, to have a voice in the industry. Because as we, voiceover it's a smaller industry, But during COVID,
Mhm.
what was the one industry in Hollywood that kept going?
Mhm.
Probably globally. Voiceover didn't slow down during COVID. We already were working from home.
Mhm.
This industry grew and has grown and is growing. And it's important that we continue to allow it to grow organically from humans and not be taken over by synthetic voices and tech companies.
Yes, definitely. And I think that is also a development that probably is still about to come to Europe. That in America, as far as I'm informed or concerned, is that most voice actors have their own studio and or
Yeah.
a technician. They work together, and it's way more independent. Whereas in Europe, more power, let's put it like that, comes to studios who distribute or cast or recommend certain voice actors, who then either come to their studio or connect via X program from my booth to their studio where they recorded locally. But that is different in the US, right?
Yeah. It's similar, but yeah, it definitely is different. You know, I've had a home studio for 12 or 15 years,
Mhm.
and I live in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
You know, if I don't have to leave my studio to go anywhere, I don't. So everybody works from home, and that's allowed a lot of people, during COVID, a lot of people left Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And so you have, in the US, which definitely been scattered. And I don't know, actually, I don't know exactly how it works with you guys, but we audition for everything. We have to audition. Most of our day is spent auditioning. And so we'll audition for all of our jobs. Very rarely do you ever get booked off of a demo reel or off of something you've pre-recorded. So a voice actor's job is full-time auditioning from home. And then a lot of times we just record the audio and send it off. Right. So we sometimes you'll connect with somebody to do a directed session. Sometimes you'll go into a studio, but this gets into very much. And again, this is all stuff we're learning from different countries, but if I record from my own home studio, I have more legal protections than if I go into somebody else's studio.
Really? How?
Copyright protections.
Okay.
So if I record at home, I own the master recording of that audio file on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually the copyright holder of that original audio file. That gives me some different protections than if I were to go into a studio. If I go into a studio, that engineer who recorded has the master recording on their computer. I don't actually own that file in any way. So recording from home provides us different protections than if we go in and record from another studio. We still sign over the transfer of rights so that the company can use that performance. But we as a voice actor still maintain, I guess we call the master recording of that audio file.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense in the case that you don't have such good and profound copyright laws and intellectual property laws like we have in Europe. Yeah, we are fighting tooth and nail to stay off of these mass auditions and
right.
it's from time to time you see if a very international project swaps over, an audition is required. You want to play ball? Well, then give me an audition. But we're trying to, and at least in the German-speaking realms, it's more likely that you send over your demos, and if you like to work with me to see whether we connect and I can apply your directions quickly enough, and you want a customized session kind of, then you have to pay something for it. And that's totally fine, but it's not for free. So because we say, well, I have X amount of commercial demos and games demos, and only if you find something that doesn't fit that character or that mood or that whatever, then I'm happy to produce something for you. But usually, I mean, it's not the reinvention of the wheel every time we do a new casting.
Which for us it is. I mean, I'll do 10 or 15 auditions a day.
Wow.
I mean, that's what your day is spent doing, right? You'll get, I've got 30 auditions from my agent sitting here right now where I have to go through and decide which ones I'm going to do.
Okay.
And submit those ones and read the script and figure out the copy and figure out the character and figure out the script, of the intention of what they're going for. Check and see if the rate is going to be something that I want to spend my time doing.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. What I wanted to ask. Do you know all the working conditions and the general bigger context of what you're auditioning for, or do you have to trust your agent? Well, if you get picked, you get to know the whatever conditions
you know that before the audition. Almost 90% of the time you get that. And if it's not in there, it usually will say it's a union job. So then you know that it's under union.
So you're on the safe side, kind of. Whatever they may use it for, it's cool, kind of, because the union contracts are regulated.
Exactly,
And okay, I see.
But this is also what what we've been kind of navigating in the U.S. because of this. Sometimes people are doing jobs that they don't know the conditions until after they've done the job, and then they get asked to sign the contract. Oh. So you sign a contract after the fact.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and how many voice actors, you walk into a session and your session starts in 5 minutes, they hand you a 12-page contract.
Wow.
Who's going to take the time to read it?
That's unfair. Right. That's really unfair.
It absolutely is unfair. And it's, it's predatory, and a lot of these contracts sign over things that you shouldn't be signing over. And a lot of these contracts are being used to say that you signed over the right to let us turn your voice into an AI voice.
That's what
we're arguing that no, you can't.
Yeah.
That this has to be separately. This has to be opt-in. It has to be very informed consent. I have to have said, yes, you can make my voice an AI voice. If I didn't, then you don't have the right to do that. Mm-hmm. And going back to kind of previously what you're saying with engineers, if you go into somebody else's studio and you record there, and they say, hey, we need some pickups, let me just throw it into 11 labs and synthesize a couple words. That's a job that I lost because they didn't bring me back in to do that pickup.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's educating engineers, it's educating producers that that's not something you can do. That first of all, that's taking work away from the voice actor. But two, you're uploading it to an AI company. I don't know what that AI company is going to do with my voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And you don't have the right to decide that my voice can be synthesized and given to an AI company just because you have it on a computer.
Plus, even if you get your voice as such removed, it can't sound like Tim Friedlander anymore.
Right.
The neural system has learned everything that you know and that you've learned along the years, and that you cannot take out of the system anymore.
Exactly.
Unless you trash it as a whole.
And unless you destroy the model that it's a part of.
And that's not going to happen, let's be honest. And that is shitty. And unfair was the most PG-13 word I was coming up with on the fly. But obviously exactly. Predatory and words like fucked up probably describe it better.
Well, I mean, and if you want to go even further, theft, you're stealing my voice, you're stealing my livelihood. You are, you didn't break into my house, but you stole something from me.
Yeah.
And you've given it to somebody else.
Yeah, definitely.
And just because I didn't lock my door doesn't mean you have the right to come in and steal my property.
You're not even able to lock your door properly on that issue.
Right, exactly. We didn't even know we had to lock our doors.
Yeah.
That's the problem, right? We didn't even realize that people were stealing from us while it was happening.
Exactly, because that goes on for 8 to 10 years, that scraping thing, and it only became public like 1.5 years or maybe 2 years ago.
Absolutely.
And when I'm hearing of that many auditions, I'm thinking of, well, what's up with all the auditions?
Absolutely.
We don't know the players, what they do with the auditions. We have to trust and hope, probably. You have to hope that nobody misuses them, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
which we're finding they are, which we're finding that jobs are being given to AI companies. People are finding their voices on websites as the voices of companies. They're like, well, just because I did a job for you 7 years ago doesn't mean that you can turn my voice into the voice of your company without paying me anything extra. That's what we're seeing currently in the U.S.
But the Instagram ad told me it was super easy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, it's super easy to steal from somebody if they leave the doors unlocked. Like, sure, I can teach anybody how to steal.
Mm-hmm.
That's not not hard. It's wrong. And you shouldn't be stealing, from that. And that's one of the things, Paul, also that I think that UVA and all these individual groups is doing is explaining how that is theft, how that is not just because you have my audio file doesn't mean that you have the right to synthesize to clone my voice, to make a copy of me and sell it on the marketplace. That shouldn't be legal. And it's not, I don't think it is legal. But people are arguing that it is.
Yeah, me personally too. But I think we have to wait for, in your case, the Supreme Court, and in our case, the European highest court, the EuGH, to decide on that matter. Yeah. Because at least in our case, the EU didn't take a clear stand on whether they said, well, let's make a legislation and put some loopholes in and see how the judges deal with that.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So putting it cynically and shortly. But I mean, I think you described it already, but I think that educational and supporting character is probably one of the biggest pluses of these organizations on a national level of NAVA and Voice Austria for Austria, but on a global level, I think for UVA.
Yeah, and I think it reaches, it not only is educational for the voice actors but for the producers and the agents and the casting directors and the engineers and the fans and people who are fans of the characters. They don't want to hear a fan of a character doesn't want to hear a synthesized version of somebody's voice in a game. I mean, we're seeing, and this is one of the things that I think is we talk a lot about the downsides, but I think there's a potential upside to this, is that people are, and by people I mean consumers, and if we want to say consumers, fans of games, fans of cartoons, are not buying the AI generated products. People don't want to interact with AI because it's completely soulless. The information is wrong. The voices don't sound good. The performance doesn't sound good. And I think we as humans have this we can tell the uncanny valley, right? If something, is that a term you guys have, the uncanny valley?
I get it, but you can.
So it's this thing where, like the original example of this was Robert Zemeckis's The Polar Express, where they tried to do original mocap, where they tried to make an animated version of Tom Hanks, and it was supposed to be a digital version of Tom Hanks, and it just looked weird. It felt uncomfortable. It didn't look right. They call that the uncanny valley. And we're seeing that with voices and with performances, that you're like, well, the voice sounds happy. It sounds angry. It sounds sad, but it doesn't feel any of those things. You can tell. And this is one of the things I think, I was talking with somebody yesterday about this, is that we've all had a conversation with somebody where they sound happy, but you can tell something's wrong. They sound angry, but they're not really angry, and you're laughing at them because they're trying to be angry. You're like, a kid gets really upset and they're like, I'm so angry at you. And you're just laughing at it because, they're not really angry. They're just like trying to be angry.
Yeah, that's also artificially induced kind of, or mechanically kind of forced onto the thing because I'm supposed to be angry right now or whatever, but it's not. And I think that is the metaphor or the pendant to AI versus a real voice. And it can be, it's a blessing for people who lose their voice or for example, as a tool for pickups that, it's not possible. Maybe you're not available because you're on one of these many interviews you're doing nowadays. But we need that today. I think our mission is to establish fair and transparent working conditions with that. Absolutely. I think it's, how do you say that, utopic or whatever, to think that we can make it go away at all.
Yeah, I don't think we can make it go away. I think that was something that we decided, NAVA decided that at the very beginning, that this wasn't something that we could just say no to, as much as we would like to. I think, and I think the more that we do this, I feel like there's more power for us to say no to something. But what we have to learn is that great. So this company, OpenAI, is going to create this system whether we like it or not. We have no way to stop it. But what we can do is make sure that their contracts are fair, make sure that every single voice they use has informed consent, meaning that every single voice that's used, the person whose voice that came from, they know their voice is there. They've given permission for their voice to be there. They understand the risks. They understand the benefits. They understand the danger of having their voice in this system, and they have given the okay for it. As opposed to what we're seeing now is, hey, I found my voice in OpenAI. I found my voice on 11 Labs. I found my voice on this website. And now you have no way to control it. You have no way to take it out of the system. You have no way to protect it. And it's right now, the impulse is to say, no, don't put my voice in anything. And some people do want to do that. And if they want to do that, and as you said, there's potential pickups, people who lose their voices. There are what we call impossible jobs. If there's a job that I, as a human, can't do, then I would license my voice to do that. But currently, there's nothing that's anywhere that we feel is safe to do that, because so much of this has been scraped and stolen prior to us being involved in this conversation.
Yeah, I think fundamental trust has been broken, and and I think we have pretty good will to reestablish that trust, but only under certain conditions. And
absolutely, yeah.
I think that's only fair to say, because, well, I didn't ask for that. I don't need that. I'm very happy to do my job another 40 years or so.
Exactly.
And it worked just fine. There was it wasn't a technological advancement that came out of nowhere. It was just better, faster, I don't know, than me. Well, tough luck. Okay, that is progress. But the cynical thing is that without our data, without our voices, our knowledge, there wouldn't be any
there would be no system,
artificial programs or systems.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No, but I think that is you can't emphasize that enough, because the general narrative on social media and partially on classic media is that, well, this is just technical progress, guys.
Right.
You better learn to deal with it, because that's how the world was working always and will always work. And you have to question those things. It's not. It's just not.
No, it's not. I was on a panel, one of the various panels I was on about a couple months ago, and somebody brought up a very interesting thought that was, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that this is a continuation of the evolution of the Industrial Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the same thing as the car, the automobile replacing the horse and buggy.
Yeah.
And they said this is the beginning of a new revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to treat this as the beginning of a new revolution. It's the artificial intelligence revolution, is whatever we want to call this. But it is not a continuation of the horse and buggy. This is something completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And that we have to treat this as if it is the next phase in something that is happening. It is not the end of something. It is the beginning of something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at it that way, then we have to reevaluate all of the laws that are in place. We have to reevaluate all of the protections that are in place and look at this in a new way of thinking that is not the continuation of what Henry Ford did in the early 1900s. It is the beginning of something that is happening in the 2020s.
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at it that way, then we have to reevaluate the entire process. We have to reevaluate how the courts operate. We have to reevaluate copyright. We are dealing with clones of humanity. We are not dealing with somebody inventing a non-horse-powered vehicle. We are dealing with the cloning of humanity.
Yeah.
Of people, the literal cloning of people.
The metaphor would be right if the evolution would have been somebody had taken all the horses in secret, would have cloned them, put them into a machine that is scalable all over the earth at once, and being able to replace all the horses of the whole world simultaneously, like that, bam, just by pushing a button. That would be the proper analogy.
Or one of the things I always say is, like, Henry Ford didn't steal everybody's horses and sell them back to us as unicorns.
Thank you.
He didn't repackage it.
Delicious.
But exactly, you're right. And didn't replace all the horses with the push of a button.
Yeah.
And this is something new, and I think that I think that we look at the way that people like Sam Altman, OpenAI, talks about how this is going to fundamentally change the course of humanity.
Mm.
And by that, artificial intelligence, the power at which artificial intelligence can operate, is going to change the course of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the people who are inventing this technology saying that. We have to look at that from this side as the beginning of something new and not the end or the continuation of something. We can't operate under the same laws, expectations, or understandings of how the world is worked.
Yeah, and the irony is that the same people say, well, but it's super easy and comfortable and user friendly, and don't think about it, just push the button. But if we take one of these two things seriously, the other one is dead wrong.
Right.
It's not possible to work together like that.
No.
And it is hard to reimagine copyright law. It is hard to rethink data protection and I don't know, personal biometric data or what makes a human who has the right to be the norm and who has to be labeled as different. Is it the human-made, like organic logo that is the thing, or is it it's artificial? Take a closer look, please. Label.
Yeah.
That is a very philosophical question, but it is. I think it takes a lot of smart people to figure that out. I don't know the answer to these things.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling based on my personal experience and my life so far.
Yeah. Well, and I think where I step into this is I say that we are the smart people to figure this out, because we're the people who are working in this.
At least on our small niche
well, exactly. And just because somebody is able to run a company and put together an AI system doesn't make them smarter than me. Doesn't make them smarter than you. It makes them, they know that thing they're working on very specifically, but they don't get the right to decide just because they say they're smarter to decide what everybody else does. And that's where I think we get to step up and say, and everybody should step up and say, I'm sorry, no, I don't agree with you just forcing this technology on us. And, he's talked about copyright law, reevaluating things. Look at what's happened in the US over the last couple of years. The courts are reevaluating decisions from 50, 60 years ago. They are reevaluating the way laws work currently. So that idea that that's not gonna happen is happening currently, and there's no reason why we can't reevaluate and look at our copyright. This is literally like tomorrow. Obviously, the day after we record this podcast, I'm spending 2 days at a copyright and AI summit where I'm going to be sitting in a room talking with a bunch of copyright lawyers for 2 days about copyright and AI. I'm there as one of the few artist representatives to talk about this from our perspective, because otherwise all you have are everybody who knows all these laws inside and out discussing these laws inside and out the way that they've always known them. I've learned about my experience with copyright law is like a year old, right? I'm literally reading papers about how did copyright laws start? Who was the first copyright thing to go into place? Which is the foundation and basics of these things, which everybody else who's been discussing it has known these things for decades. Now we're coming into this with a fresh set of eyes and a fresh set of thinking to help reevaluate these concepts that exist in a new world, in a new paradigm, in a new whatever you want, whatever buzzword you want to pick to say, it's the new normal, it's the new paradigm, it's a shift, it's whatever it might be. The world is changing, and we're at a very quick and rapid and substantial change that's happening fairly instantaneously in the course of history. We happen to be here at this time right now. We just find ourselves in this position. Which I don't think anybody foresaw, at least nobody in our industry foresaw this to this extent, this quickly.
No, if you would have talked to me about that, where we are at now, 2 years ago, I would have, I mean, come on. No, but I think this is also where another power of organizations like UVA lies, because we know that the tech is influencing or lobbying the lawmaking process and this evaluation process. It's clear. But as a national organization, usually you don't get the same time that they listen to you or the same appointments with the same people. But as a global organization, as I've experienced at least, and contradict me if I'm wrong, but you get the appointments in Brussels. You get the people to listen to you for a couple of hours or inviting you to these discussions because you matter, because you're not only representing your I don't know, for us in Austria, it's like 230 members. So it's not really much. It matters to our small country, obviously, but in a global context, if you represent several 20,000s of people, it's a whole different story, and you have an umbrella that makes you stronger, makes your case stronger, because you don't only speak for your, I don't know how many members NAVA has, a couple of hundreds, maybe 1,000, but 20, 30, 50,000 people all at once.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we're a little over 1,000 for NAVA, but SAG-AFTRA, which is the union in the United States, is 160,000 members.
Oof.
So SAG-AFTRA can say we represent 160,000 people. And that's massive, right? That's leverage right there. UVA saying we represent 20, 30, 40,000 people across the globe. 40,000 people is not a lot of people, but that is a massive part of the industry that we represent and we speak for. And you're absolutely right. That is powerful. And that,
plus you don't get to say, well, okay, it didn't work in let's say the US, let's go to England or Australia or so.
Right.
Well, Australia is part of UVA now too. They're going to ask the same questions. They're going to ask for the same conditions. It's not that they woke up after a 2 years sleep and what is this new technology? Let's try it out.
Nope. They're absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's where, this is where this is what we said, the very, very, kind of very early in this, is that, we can all share the experiences we're having so that nobody's caught off guard. So that when these contracts show up, that we're not surprised at what we see in these contracts, that Australia is not surprised at what they see in these contracts, that Austria is not surprised when somebody gives you a contract. You can reach out to the UK, you reach out to France, you reach out to me, and we say, oh yeah, we saw this contract already. Our lawyers have looked at it. This is what you want to make sure you adjust in this contract. And you go back to somebody the same day and say, great, no, we're taking this out, this out, this out, and this out. And this is one of the things I think that, we as artists forget sometimes, because we're artists, and artists sometimes just want to do our art, right? We want to do our performance, and we don't want to deal with the other things we want to deal with. But we as artists are one half of that contract. Somebody gives us an agreement. We don't, at least this is something that, and it's tough to say, but we don't have to agree to everything that is in that contract. You could potentially lose the job, but losing the job is better than having your voice stolen and never working again.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different...
And it is a very tough position to be in.
Yeah, it's a different leverage now. Up until now, it was, but the appreciation and the validation and the portfolio versus, maybe I work for a little less money. But it's still only money. Well, maybe you make $1,000 less than you would have made if you would have fought for it and risked that you don't get it. But now it's like all in or all out.
Right.
Potentially. That is.
Well, we talk about a lot, is like, don't let your next job be your last job. Don't let and if you're a new voice actor, don't let your first job be your last job. Don't sign away the rights to your voice ever. In a way that lets somebody use it without your permission.
Yeah. And also these experiences that we shared were the basis for the guidelines we developed and put out on a global level for everybody to use and to adapt to their needs, whichever part of the industry, or for example, our actors union went to us and said, wow, these guidelines look really great, and could we adapt them? And I said, sure. That is, it's not a proprietary thing.
No.
It's for everybody to, and especially for actors, it's very easy to adapt, to add likeness to voice, and boom, you have proper guidelines, you have ground rules, you have set a stage where you can negotiate and or know from the start, after asking one or two questions, whether it makes sense to go on with these communications or not. So that is pretty powerful. And like the validation is even higher when people from the industry side hear that this is the global consensus from the artist's side. And throw in some fair play and some, come on, you want to work in a couple of years too, because if you're a producing part of the industry, well, rest assured that you're next, because audio post-production automation is not a big thing. It's out there, and it's getting better too. And I'm sorry to say that, as much as I appreciate sound engineers and I don't know, advertisement guys or film productions guys, but you don't have the emotional connection to the general public.
Right.
You are literally replaceable hopefully by another human being still,
Right.
but
Right.
generally we are kind of a bittersweet pill there to work with, because people care whether it's a human talking to them or not.
They care whether it's a human. They care if it's the human that they recognize. If it's a voice they've been hearing forever and you switch that voice, that's no longer the same person. You're like, that's not the same character. This isn't right.
Yeah. What is up with you?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And kind of what you said, if you replace the human voice actor, well, then you don't need an engineer. You don't need a casting director. You don't need an agent. You don't need a studio. You don't need an editor. You don't need a producer. You don't need somebody to distribute it. Now that's 8 or 10 people that are out of work who are replaceable because the human voice actor is not there. Because if you don't need a human voice actor, these other 10 people aren't needed either.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous.
It's a food chain. It's a symbiosis that profits off each other. And even if you're a producing studio that says, well, we're going to produce totally synthetic and we don't care about, human work. Well, good luck with applying your up until now rates for just pushing a button. Whereas for producing the whole campaign, it took you a week or something like that up until now. So good luck charging the same amount of money or a similar amount of money for pushing 2 buttons and prompting 3 sentences, and then you're done. So it also the whole thing loses worth, and that transcribes to the end product, I think. If it's plastic, it's friggin' plastic. It's not worth anything. If it's stainless steel, it's a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yep.
So, and I think at least in Austria, different parts of the industry are getting that now or in the last couple of months, whereas last year maybe they were still enthusiastic and thinking about the potential, and maybe we could, use that as a shortcut to maximize growth and such. And now they're and looking for fair and transparent cooperations to survive themselves, to build a future themselves for themselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
Second, I'm gonna edit it out. That blank moment.
That's the best part. That's the best part. We've talked about so much.
Yeah, exactly. I'm empty now. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, but maybe I don't know if you'd like. Tell me. You mentioned SAG-AFTRA as your kind of a big brother or more established. SAG-AFTRA is probably the union or one of the unions. Tell me about if you're allowed to, obviously, about the cooperation between you guys. Are we being taken into consideration somehow, or is voice?
Well, yeah, I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA. I have been for almost 10 years. I'm on 4 of the committees. I'm working on the new tech committee. I'm working on the policy committee. I'm on the organizing committee, and I'm on the voiceover committee. And SAG-AFTRA has been supportive of NAVA and what we've been doing since we started. You mentioned, earlier about some of the meetings we had. Duncan Crabtree Ireland, who's the national executive director, showed up in person to a meeting in France with us and with UVA and with FIA and with SFV, I believe, right? Another group out of France. SFA. But Duncan showed up in person for a couple of hours, which I think says a lot to, at the very least, they're listening, whether that goes through the process and becomes something on the outcome that actually does change things. I think it is, but they're listening, and he showed up, and that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
And we work alongside, I'm literally am on the committees that's in SAG-AFTRA working on these policies. And so I get to bring the voice actor perspective to this. A lot of times I'm the only voice actor in that room, and I'm the only one who actually gets to talk about these things. And to say things, because I'm the only one who has that experience. And so that's extremely important. And we're getting more voice actors into positions of committees and board members to try and bring our perspective to the larger union. But it is, SAG-AFTRA is Screen Actors Guild, and SAG is Screen Actors Guild, and the second half is AFTRA, which is the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. So it's screen actors first, and radio and voice actors second. They used to be two separate unions. 10 years ago, they merged and became one union. But voiceover has always been very much a secondary thought. It's like, an on-camera actor is like, oh, well, I got a slow day. Let me just go do voiceover. Because I'm not booking any on-camera stuff. So I'm just going to I'll go pick up a couple voiceover gigs. We know it's not that simple to just pick up a couple voiceover gigs. At least nothing that's going to pay well enough to be beneficial. To make it worth the time, but I think we're getting that in there. I think they're paying attention. I'm frequently talking to the SAG-AFTRA lawyers and policymakers and letting people know about the concerns. We're sharing information back and forth, but I think the industry, as a whole, the creative or artistic industry or performer industry, whatever you want to call it, is seeing how this is a danger to everybody and not just to certain parts of the industry. It's not just animators or graphic artists or visual artists or voice actors or singers or dancers, or it's everybody who is part of the humanities, a part of creating art, that's being affected by this and is going to be affected by that. And I think that this is, at least for now, we've got a fairly unified coalition of people who are fighting for the same thing, which is the protections of human created art in whatever form that takes, whether you're on camera or behind the microphone or in a mocap performance capture suit or being the illustrator who's drawing the animations for the video games. We're all tied together and connected.
Yeah, and that is our strength too, because if we manage to get all on the same line and, for example, say no, then everything stands still.
Yeah.
It's not like the thing continues, but without you, sorry, Tim, you didn't book a job today.
Right.
But I love you guys for putting things into such clear and memorable terms. For example, usage is usage. It's super clear. It's super easy. It's almost like a claim or a slogan or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you could summarize our struggles, it's probably about consent, control, and compensation.
Yeah.
What are these things, or maybe another completely different thing, is probably for you, in your opinion, the hardest to achieve or to negotiate?
Out of those three?
Yeah, or out of the AI problem we're dealing with.
Compensation actually is really the hardest thing, because I don't think people fully comprehend the value of art, and they think that they're overpaying or that you're asking for too much as an artist for things. And it's kind of one of the things I kind of alluded to earlier, is that I think one of the outcomes of this is it may potentially be a better appreciation and a better understanding of the value of human artists. But consent and control, surprisingly, has been an easy conversation from this end.
Really? Wow. Cool.
As people understand these things and understand why consent and control are important is easy. It's an easy conversation to have. You say, I don't want my voice stolen and I don't want it used without you telling me where it's going to be used. That's consent and control. Compensation is hard because the whole point of these AI systems is to make it cheap and easy. And if you show that if you want a quality product, it's not going to be cheap, that conversation completely changes. So compensation completely changes when you get into these into these discussions. Consent and control, we've gotten most of these companies to put in some kind of better protections into their contracts for consent and control. Compensation is the sticker. That's the really hard part.
Yeah, and it does make sense, since the whole deal about AI is to make it sound, look cheap and fast. And
Exactly.
why should I'm thinking industry side now, why should I pay the same amount for something that I can get in a high quality and even maybe enjoyable or sympathetic or having a good time kind of way, rather than pushing a couple of buttons or I don't know, hiring a nerd to prompt the shit out of some voice script or something.
Well, and that goes to the consumer side as well. If I'm a consumer. Why am I going to pay the same amount to go see a movie that I took one person to create as I'm going to go to see a movie that I know there was an entire human cast behind it? I'm not paying the same price for that. Why would I pay the same price for a video game that's AI generated as I would for a video game that's not AI generated? Why would I pay the same price for something that's synthetic?
Yeah.
Why pay the same price for the second best?
Yeah.
When you can get the best.
Yeah, and a quick side note: apologies and no disrespect to prompting nerds, because you can probably decide on my fate in a couple of months now. But you guys get the gist. It's not disrespectful. It's a loving pun, and
I mean, and there is an art to prompting,
definitely
in that, but that can't be done. You don't just get to use everything else out there for no compensation and no consequences for that, right? You don't get to just steal everything.
Yeah.
For that, so.
Yeah. And another big problem, in my perspective at least, and hopefully you can shed some light and some hope on that issue too, is how to control or how to verify how my voice was used, where it's landed. Search the internet for Patrick's voice, please. Yeah. Come on. So that was a very metaphorical introduction for my next question, because you're working with or you founded another company, correct me if I'm wrong, that can identify whether a voice is human or synthetic, and can also trace the internet, hopefully, where to find it, where it was published and used. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. It's a company called Lockvox, Lokvox. I started looking at this concept about 3 years ago with NFTs. What if we could attach all of our audio files to NFTs? Because as we said like an hour ago, we're sending out audio files. I'm doing 20, 30 auditions a day. Every one of those audio files goes to somebody, and I don't know where it goes from there. So what if we could attach an NFT to every one of our audio files? Now you can't afford to do that. It's just way too expensive to do that. So we've been looking at various other parts of this technology. The first step we've done is to try and develop something, or work with a company to develop this ability to determine if something is a human voice or a synthetic voice. And to be able to tell whose voice did it come from. So that you can say, I hear this voice, it sounds like that like me, is that me? So that's kind of the very earliest foundations of this. The next step we're working on right now is the watermarking and traceability, to trace, track, and monitor every audio file. I want to know, my audio file leaves my computer. I want to know where it goes. I want to know who has it. I want to know who's done what with it, so that I can trace and track that, so I know where it went. So that's what we're working on right now, are these embeddable watermarks that are embedded in the sound wave, so that you can't remove them. So the goal with this is to be able to say, hey, I hear a commercial on TV. Let me hold up my phone and it'll match to the watermark. Oh, that audio file came from my computer on this day and recorded at home, and it went through this entire process and is now on the air. So that you can say, yes, that is me. Or, wow, that's an audition that I did that you never paid me for.
Exactly.
And you're running it now on this network. You got to pay me money. Or in the US, and I'm sure it's probably the same as well for you, we'll run a commercial and you get to buy it for 13 weeks at a time. So you run it for 13 weeks. And if you run it again for another 13 weeks, you have to pay me again. So if we have no idea that spot's running, I can't monitor it and know it's running again. If my audio file, if I get traced and tracked and I get boom, ding, your audio file's running. It was supposed to have stopped running yesterday, but now your spot's still running. Boom, agent's going to send them an invoice. You got to pay us for another 13 weeks. The union sends them an invoice, another 13 weeks, so that you can have some control. Because what we want to do is try and take back control over the usage of our voices. You said earlier, usage is usage. Usage has value. That's where this value comes from. A commercial has value because people are watching it, which means you're using my voice to sell your product. You're going to sell more products because more people are seeing it. That's got value to you as an advertiser. And I want to know if you're still using my voice. Right now, all we have to do, we have to wait for cue sheets. We wait for somebody to say, hey, we used your voice. and you go, gee, thanks for using my voice. How much did you use it for? Well, we used it maybe, I don't know, like 100 times, maybe 200 times. I don't know. Well, was it 100 times or 200 times or 10,000 times that you used my voice for something? Well, I don't know. We'll say it was 500 times. And you trust them to tell you how much they used your voice and to pay you accordingly for the amount that they use of your voice. We want to know exactly how you use it 1,322 times. You're going to pay me for the usage of 1,322 uses of my voice.
Or in different media, for example.
Absolutely.
We didn't talk about the radio airing, for example, or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. But how far are we away from a commercial launch of that? Because it makes me thirsty for that product.
We're currently testing. I've been testing for the last 2 weeks the human verification. And because what we're seeing here, here's something for you to be prepared for, is that U.S. voice actors are now being asked to prove that the audio file they submitted is human and not synthetic before the client will pay them.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that is rich.
Be prepared for that one. So, well, and so let's say you record something from home and you send somebody an audio file. Can you prove that is a real human voice on that audio file?
I'll send a screenshot with my finger.
Exactly. Right.
Recording that same.
So, now the question. So now the question comes in: is that video real?
Oh, fuck me.
Can you prove that video is real? Can you prove that video is not an AI generated video of you doing an AI generated script? Now we're being asked. We haven't seen it a lot yet. But I know 4 people in the last month who have been asked to prove that the audio file was real before the client would pay them.
Okay.
Right.
That is a bit. That is something to digest. I think I'm gonna have to sleep on that. That is
so.
Okay.
Right now, could you, if you were to email a client a file, could you prove to them that file is really your voice?
I mean, no,
you can't.
Not right? Definitively.
Not definitively. Absolutely. And can you prove that 100% of that audio is your voice? Can you prove that this word in the middle is actually what you said? Can you verify that? Can you show the authenticity? So this now goes to the next step, is that the AI systems have now put doubt. Authenticity is in doubt. Fact is now doubtable. Something you've seen. You can't trust your eyes. You can't trust your ears. The only thing you can really trust is something you can touch. I can touch this and physically feel it. I can tell you this is not a synthetic coffee cup. But if you just heard it, could you prove that is not a synthetic sound of a coffee cup, right?
Yeah, or a squeaking bed or something like that.
Exactly, right? Yeah. So there's no way you heard it, but can you prove that was real? And currently, we're seeing, as I said, only 4 people that I know of currently that have had to prove that their audio was them. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what they're. So what we're doing is I've been doing this beta test where people send me an audio file. I run it through the system. I print up the results. I send them a certificate that says this audio file is verified to be human generated. And they have a certificate that says this file is human. And then the next step is this watermarking, and the tech. I have it on my phone now. It's phenomenal. You embed it. And you make that, it shows up kind of like Shazam.
Wow.
So you hold it up and it will tell you this voice. Oh, who's this voice on this commercial? Hey, look at that. It's Patrick. He recorded it on this date in this recording studio with this engineer for this producer, for this client, whatever data you want to have on that audio file. And it says here that it's supposed to stop airing on July 15th. Well, it's July 16th. I better tell Patrick that his spot's still airing. I heard it. Here you go, and you can go back to that client.
Coming in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but you do that automated. It's automated so that you have listening stations around in wherever it is that can track this, and you get a notification that says, "Hey, Bing, we heard your spot still running. You had an alert set to let you know if it was running after the expiration date, and now it's still running. So you got to go back and get paid."
Amazing. So I'm sorry, but I have to press you on this. How far away are we from a commercial rollout?
Anywhere between like 6 days and 6 months.
Okay.
So we're, we are as any new tech company, we are trying to, we need money, right? And we need money to launch and create a product that we can put out to people sooner rather than later.
Nice.
But
still foreseeable future, not like some distant.
We want to be the first ones to do it. So hopefully within the next month or so, next 6 weeks.
Wow. Amazing.
So I've been saying the next 6 weeks for like the last 6 months, but we're every day we get closer on this. So
I'm gonna air this in 6 weeks to give you another 6 weeks.
Another 6 weeks. So that's why I'm saying in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks from whenever you're hearing this audio. So
very nice.
So,
but do you know any like fair or cool players in the game already that honor these ground rules or that are transparent and open about their practices?
Yeah, we've had good conversations with Respeecher. So you mentioned Russia; they're out of the Ukraine. We've been speaking with 11 Labs for about a year. And the sticking point with 11 Labs is compensation. We've seen it in some of they have some public auditions they've put out in the US where the rates have been not good at all, and we've pushed back against them. OpenAI, we've actually had for the last 6 weeks been speaking with OpenAI about their contracts, and we're going to be the plan is to help them put in new controls on their new contracts to help them be more voice actor friendly. One of the things they did removed all of the voices they had on their platform that didn't have informed consent, and have taken down all of their voices. So we're hoping that OpenAI will be a part of this conversation with us. Narrative.ai, wellsaidlabs.ai, Poly.ai. There's a new one called Ethovox, which is coming out, which is actually being built by voice actors. From the ground up to be a fully ethical system from the ground up.
That sounds refreshing.
And yeah, and part of this has been these conversations that we've been having with companies saying, hey, that is damaging to us, and here is why. And they're saying, well, it wasn't our intention. Let's try and fix this. Now the question is, has the damage already been done? Are all the voices already in these systems? And have we already lost control over what happens going forward? But as you said earlier, our voices, the high quality voices, our performances are gold to these companies. And they always want to get better, which means they're going to have to keep retraining their systems. If they want to be the best ones in the market, they have to constantly retrain their systems, which means they're going to need our voices at some point to be the best
there's
product.
Our leverage.
So there's
basically
our leverage. Do not give away your voice. It's not too late. I don't think it's too late. I think the AI companies are here, but the outcome is not inevitable. What's going to happen with these companies on the market is not already foreseen. It's not already a given that we've stepped in just in time. We might be a little too late in a lot of areas, but I think we've got things in place and protected already, and we've made some very small but I think important changes and steps in the last year that I think have stopped it from completely going off the cliff and being unsalvageable.
Yeah, I think there's a big worth in just being uncomfortable.
Yeah,
that is a very Austrian thing.
Yeah.
Just being uncomfortable here. I'm not gonna kill that whole thing or lie down and bury my head in the sand. I'm here, but I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I'm asking questions.
Absolutely.
I'm looking for how to get to my rights and my how to establish legal protections. So I think that is a big thing, and it can be productive to be uncomfortable because it forces people to rethink their strategies, to evaluate how they proceed. Is it possible to do to pull an Uber on the voiceover world, so to speak?
Right.
No, it's not. Yeah. Because in this case, the cab drivers woke up hopefully early enough to ask some questions and put in some boundaries.
And if we're uncomfortable, make the other side equally uncomfortable. Make these the companies we're talking with, these voice companies, uncomfortable as well. Put them in an uncomfortable, ask them uncomfortable questions. and put them in the uncomfortable situations.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about the future for how do you see our industry in 5 years?
It's a good question. I see it differently than I would have before. I think in the next 5 years, I think we have to look in the next 2 years. I don't think we get to look 5 years down the road. I think we have to look in 2-year cycles. And I think we're coming off of this last 2-year cycle of what we've done in 23, 24, 22, 24. And we have to look to 25, 26 and see what's going to happen in those things. I think that the technology moves too quickly.
You're right. Yeah.
That those cycles are no longer decade-long cycles. They're year-long cycles. They're 2-year-long cycles. And we have to look at those things in that context as opposed to in 5 years from now. I think that what happens in the next 6 months is going to have a big impact on the next 5 years. And I don't know that we can foresee what's going to happen in the next 6 months. What happens with the election in the US? What happens with court cases in the EU and in Austria and in France? And what happens with these tech companies? What happens with consumers who start pushing back against these tech companies? That's going to really lay out a lot of what's going to happen in the next 5 years. But I think that we are in a position to affect what happens in the next 5 years and to determine what the next 5 years look like in a way that we probably don't realize we are or didn't know we were going to be in this position. But I think we have the power to change what those next 5 years look like. And I think that we shouldn't predict what the next 5 years should look like. We should determine what the next 5 years should look like. And we should be a part of making sure that those next 5 years look the way we want them to look.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing I wanted to add is I think one of the biggest questions is, are these systems going to become profitable? Because now
that is a great question. I don't think they are.
No, and then if not, at least latest in 2-3 years, all the investors are going to pull the plug.
Absolutely. Well, and you have to look at if you want to go back and look at voices.com, if you want to look at somebody in Goldman Sachs or somebody invested $12 million in them 5 years ago, and they forced the CEO to leave the company this year because they didn't make them return on their money. I mean, there's a new report that came out that said, I think actually it was from Goldman Sachs, came out about 3 weeks ago, that said in order for these AI companies to be profitable, they have to be bringing in $600 billion in profit a year. The biggest company right now is not making any money. Maybe Microsoft is making $1 billion a year.
Yeah.
Currently, right, in profit.
Yeah.
$600 billion a year is an impossible level to get to in the next year.
Yeah, and that explains why they're pushing it so hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Just one last question, because then I think we've had enough for
had enough of Tim for the day. Yeah, no,
not of Tim, but of the topic. I love talking to you, and I could go on, but you have a busy day too.
I got an interview in about 15 minutes. So
yeah. So give me one last question. If you were to meet your 20-year-old self today, what would you tell him?
Man, that is get your shit together, man. That's what I would say.
But you were a clarinet player, Tim.
I was a clarinet player. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was in the midst of
you got your shit together.
I do. Yeah, that's good. I'm glad it looks like that. Man, that's a tough one. I mean, like the best thing I could say if I was 20 is that it's not the end of anything. Things are just getting started, and there's plenty of time ahead. I was very much. I wasn't a professional musician. I wasn't a famous musician at 20. I've already failed. Like if you're a musician and you're still alive at 28, you failed because you didn't die at 27, a famous musician, right? You weren't, Jimi Hendrix and Jim Morrison and all the, how many famous, Amy Winehouse was 27, right? If you're a musician and you lived at 28, you've already failed. So, but I would say there's time. There's plenty of time. There's plenty of time, but don't wait.
Nice.
We'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice closure for our talk. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't the last time. I know it wasn't the last time off camera that we met, happy to redo this in maybe a year's time or whenever there's something to talk about significant. And thank you for your time and your expertise and just being you.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Patrick. This is great.
And to you all also, thank you for staying in and listening until the end. Whoever is listening to this now is very cool. You know the drill. If you like the episode, share it, like it, subscribe, ring the bell, whatever floats your boat. And see you next time. Bye-bye.